1 Samuel 15, let's call this one Saul at his worst with regard to his pocket, understanding that the word says that the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And in this case, it's not money, but it's still stuff that's going to get Saul into trouble, as we have already seen in chapter 13. Saul at his worst with regard to trying to cling to popularity, or likes, as we would sometimes call them. In chapter 14, Saul at his worst with regard to his belly, or his appetite in that chapter, with regard to his appetite for vengeance, motivating him to starve his own soldiers. And then finally in this chapter, we're going to see the way in which God's going to give Saul another chance as king to lead his people into victory in battle. And he's going to give them victory in battle, telling Saul that this time it's going to be against the Amalekites, understanding that back when we have already seen God say, because of what Amalek has done to Israel in the past, Amalek has to go. This is not an enemy you can live with. This is an enemy you're going to have to get rid of. And he's going to tell Saul to do just that. But Saul is going to, after the battle, see that the Amalekites have some pretty nice stuff. So what he's going to do is get rid of all the stuff that he don't want to necessarily fill his pockets with, and he is going to keep the rest. And so when Samuel finds Saul, he is going to hear evidence. Saul has not, once again, paid attention to the detail of what God has asked him to do. And when Saul sees him, he's going to try to head off trouble at the pass, saying, "Bless you, Samuel. I have performed the work of the Lord." Or some translations are going to say, "I have performed the command of the Lord." And Samuel's going to say, "What then is this bleating of sheep?" A very famous passage that says, essentially, "Why am I still hearing the noise from animals God commanded you to kill?" And he's going to say, "Because we kept the best of them to offer a sacrifice." This is going to lead into, honestly, a set of impressive spins on the truth, where Saul tries to offer up a positive reason under the law for disobeying the command of God. It's pretty clever, but oftentimes, as you've probably heard, sometimes when we are clever in trying to outsmart others, the one we really outsmart is ourselves. And that's exactly what Saul does here. God is not trying to hear it. And just as Saul has rejected doing the details of what God has asked him to do, God is now going to reject Saul as king, and that's finally going to get his attention. Because once again, as we mentioned with chapters past, there are times when God can put enough pressure on us that the truth will finally come out. And once God finally says, "Enough, the kingdom is no longer yours," Saul finally feels enough personal pain to tell the truth. And so that's what happens. He's going to confess that he sinned, but it's going to be too late. And so at the end of the chapter, we're going to get a second look at one of Saul's chief motivations. Way back when we talked about his clinging to popularity being a thing, here, even as the kingdom is being taken from him, he's still going to want to try to keep up appearances and say, at least walk out with me. So the priests and the nation will still kind of see me as something. And that's my paraphrase. But that's essentially what the cross references I saw this week pointed to, because it pointed to a point in Jesus' ministry when he is contending with the religious leaders in Israel at that time. He's saying, you cannot seek the praise that comes from God because you're too busy seeking the praise that comes from the people around you. And that, in many ways, is what Saul is doing here, even when the substance of his kingdom is slipped through his fingers. Which is why we often say God's best to us as we go forward in him. God will, in this time, not allowing opportunities to fill our pockets to cause us to play games with cutting corners on our responsibilities.